September 1940, London. The city lives by sirens and the thud of bombs. At night, families crowd into shelters as the streets collapse under fire, while above them the Royal Air Force battles wave after wave of German bombers. In Berlin, Hitler's commanders study invasion maps and search for weaknesses in the British defense. They know the British people will not easily surrender, yet some believe victory might come not through force alone, but through politics. Files prepared by the SD, the Nazi intelligence service, explore how Britain might be divided from within. They speak of a former king, restless in exile, who could be persuaded to return under German influence. Among the names of his former contacts are German officials, including Nazi Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop. What is interesting for the Germans is that beside the former king stands the woman for whom he had given up his throne, a figure whispered to have met Ribbentrop years before many times in private. In the midst of Britain's darkest hour, her name becomes part of the plans drawn up by Nazi Germany. Her name is Wallis Simpson. Bessie Wallis Warfield was born on the 19th of June, 1896 in Pennsylvania in the United States. Her father, Teakle Wallis Warfield, was a merchant, but died young when she was still a baby. Her mother, Alice Montague, a daughter of stockbroker William Lataine Montague, raised her after the death of her husband in Baltimore with the help of relatives. Bessie Wallis received good education. In 1912, her uncle arranged for her to attend Oldfield School, the most expensive girls' school in Maryland. Between 1912 and 1914, she studied there, making friends with girls from wealthy and well-known families. Teachers remembered her as determined and ambitious. One pupil said later that Wallis was brighter than the rest, that she set her mind on reaching the top of the class. She dressed with care, never appeared untidy, and worked hard to stand out of the crowd. In 1916, at the age of 20, she married Earl Winfield Spencer Jr., a U.S. Navy aviator. The marriage brought her more loneliness than comfort. He was dashing in uniform, but drank heavily, and was often away on long postings abroad. Wallis used her time alone for various romances, for example, with Argentine diplomat Felipe de Espil. She also lived abroad. She spent some time also in China, especially in Beijing. It was here that later gossip placed her in an affair with Count Galeazzo Ciano, the Italian diplomat who later became Italian dictator Benito Mussolini's son-in-law and the foreign minister of fascist Italy. Rumors claimed she had become pregnant by him and suffered a failed abortion that left her unable to bear children. There was no firm evidence ever produced, but gossip stained her public name. Due to these affairs, as well as her husband's excessive alcohol consumption, they separated several times, and after years of disappointment, their marriage ended in divorce in December 1927. By the time her marriage to Spencer was dissolved, Wallis met Ernest Aldrich Simpson, an Anglo-American shipping executive. Simpson divorced his first wife to be with Wallis, and they married in July 1928. With Ernest, she crossed the Atlantic, leaving behind Baltimore for the larger world of London society. Though she lived comfortably and her new husband was kind, as the years passed, their paths grew apart. Wallis became known among the higher circles in England, while Ernest struggled with financial difficulties, as the couple lived beyond their financial means. Their marriage ended in divorce in 1937, a casualty of her growing closeness she had been developing for years with another man, whose life was even more complicated than hers. That man was Edward, the Prince of Wales, heir to the throne of Britain and the most eligible bachelor in Europe. Edward had a natural charm, a soft voice, and a warmth that reached those who met him. Yet he carried doubts about his life, and the duties of kingship pressed on him like a weight he had never chosen. With Wallis, he felt different, free of formality. Their friendship, at first one of dinners and weekends, deepened into love. Wallis gave him affection and companionship, and Edward gave her devotion that grew stronger with each passing month. For Wallis, however, it was also dangerous. She was still married, and she had already been divorced once. The foreign press spoke openly of the affair, while the British newspaper, bound by restraint and loyalty to the Crown, remained silent. In January 1934, Wallis allegedly became Edward's mistress. Edward denied this to his father, King George V, despite royal staff seeing him in bed together with Simpson. In January 1936, King George V died, and Edward became King Edward VIII. Almost at once, he made it clear that he wished to marry Wallis once her divorce with Ernest Simpson was final. But British law and custom blocked the way. The Church of England, of which the British king was supreme governor, opposed the marriage of divorced persons with living former spouses. The government, led by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, told Edward that his marriage would not be accepted by Parliament or by the dominions of the British Empire. Across Britain, religious leaders warned of scandal. To the king's family, the situation was unthinkable. By the autumn of 1936, the matter was no longer private. Politicians, churchmen, and journalists at home as well as abroad all spoke of it. The government pressed Edward for a decision: abandon the marriage, marry against all advice and face collapse of the government, or abdicate. In December, he chose abdication. Edward's reign had lasted less than a year, and his farewell broadcast reached millions. The king spoke in calm tones of the woman he loved, saying he could not carry the heavy burden of kingship without her by his side. To many, it was the most romantic gesture of the age. To others, it was reckless and selfish. For Wallis, the cost was immense. She became the woman blamed for a constitutional crisis, scorned across the British Empire as the reason a king had thrown away his crown. Wallis married Edward, now titled the Duke of Windsor, in June 1937 in France. She became Duchess of Windsor, but was denied the title of Royal Highness. That refusal cut deep, marking her as an outsider of the royal family. The couple lived in France, surrounding themselves with elegant furniture, photographs, and society friends. Yet Europe was uneasy, and war was getting near. In October 1937, Edward and Wallis traveled to Germany at the invitation of Nazi officials. They toured factories and welfare projects, admired new highways, and were photographed. The pictures showed them smiling, and those images never faded from public memory. Finally, they visited Adolf Hitler at Berchtesgaden. The pair maintained ties to Joachim von Ribbentrop, the German ambassador to London, and later Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nazi Germany. Rumor had it that Wallis and Ribbentrop had an affair in London. It was said he sent her 17 carnations, one for each time they had slept together. The FBI later noted that she was in constant contact with him, and MI5 worried she might pass on secret information to Nazi Germany. Wallis denied such stories, but the suspicion of the intelligence officers remained. For Edward, Nazi Germany had a certain attraction. He admired its order, its opposition to communism, and he naively believed that Hitler might preserve peace in Europe. German files captured after the war by the Allies revealed that Nazi leaders considered Edward a potential ally during the Second World War, which started on the 1st of September 1939. When France fell after 6 weeks in 1940, German officials devised the so-called Operation Willi, a plan to lure or abduct the Duke and restore him to the throne as a puppet king once Britain was conquered by the Germans. Whether Edward encouraged these ideas is unclear, but the mere existence of such plans deepened suspicion of him and his wife, who had connections to high-ranking Nazis. As German forces advanced in France in 1940, the former king and his wife fled south with crowds of refugees, first to Franco's Spain and then to Portugal. There, German agents tried to lure Edward into their schemes. The British government grew alarmed. The Prime Minister, Winston Churchill himself, sent sharp warnings. To remove the danger of the capture or willing collaboration of the former king with the enemy, Edward was appointed governor of the Bahamas and sent across the Atlantic. Life in the Bahamas, which was under British rule, was safe but dull. The city of Nassau was hot, quiet, and far from the European world they had known. Wallis worked with charities, schools, and hospitals, appearing in public with grace. She supported fundraising, visited classrooms, and tried to make a difference in the small colony. They felt cast out and judged. Edward sometimes made remarks that praised German social order or echoed prejudices about Jews, which only increased mistrust in London and Washington. Wallis shared Edward's sense of exile, and her bitterness was accompanied by racist remarks directed at the local Bahamian population. When the Second World War ended, the royal couple returned to France. Their home in Paris became a gathering place for the fashionable and famous. Wallis appeared in magazines, her jewels sparkling, her gowns praised. Their rooms were decorated with fine furniture, family photographs, and gifts from visitors. Yet the shadow of the 1930s remained. The discovery of the Marburg Files, captured German documents containing the information about Operation Willi, confirmed that Nazi officials had seen the Windsors as useful. Some thought this proved their dangerous sympathies. Others believed it showed only their foolishness. Wallis defended herself by saying she never supported Nazi dictatorship. She claimed her only wish in the 1930s had been peace and a hope to avoid another bloodbath. Her later years were quieter. Edward's health failed, and he died from throat cancer in 1972. Their marriage, which remained childless, left Wallis to face her own health problems in the final years of her life. She had dementia and lost her ability to speak in 1980. Towards the end of her life, she was bedridden and did not receive any visitors apart from her doctor and nurses. Wallis Simpson, the woman for whom the king abdicated his throne, died on the 24th of April, 1986. She was 89 years old. Before we end today's story, take a look at worldhistory.tv, your special destination for true history lovers. Discover exclusive documentaries and incredible stories you won't find anywhere else. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.